I'd like to just have a wonderful presentation because we talked earlier about pilot purgatory and scaling AI. So we have the wonderful Stephen Fitzgerald, Senior Solutions Consultant for SEEQ, who's going to tell us all about it. Big round of applause, please. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, good to meet you all. Stephen here. As we said, I'm a SEEQ solution consultant, and essentially I'm working with plenty of people like you, helping them essentially accomplish your goals using technology like AI. So before I start, I have to say I was pretty concerned about talking about AI, having the agenda being very AI focused, right? I said, okay, it's going to be AI. So I'm quite happy that Steve earlier had a section without AI, and this panel here was also not too heavy on AI, so I can go back to AI without feeling like I'm saturating your attention span, right? So what I'm going to talk about here are the challenges about moving from pilots to production using AI different workflows. All right. So the first thing is most of us have definitely had this experience of AI that you can see here on the screen, where you ask a question and you get an answer that comes back to you. The answer is confident, it's polished, it's often helpful. And then maybe you come back to it, or your colleague asks the same question in a slightly different way, and the answer changes, right? Maybe not dramatically, but enough to be impactful. Maybe the AI agrees with an assumption you did not make, or maybe it adds information that, while relevant to the context, is not relevant to you, right? So essentially, when you are writing an email or using ChatGPT or whatever LLM of your choice to, just write some slides, I have to say I definitely used AI to help me with my slides here, like in the pictures and stuff. But if anything goes wrong here, it's an inconvenience, right? It's not a big deal. I can move something around. Nothing happens. When we are in operation, on the other hand, if something changes that way, and we are making a decision that is going to impact reliability, emissions, safety, smaller inconsistencies like these can break trust super quickly. So for us, the question isn't if AI can answer a question about process, about production, or about industry. It's about whether we can trust that information enough to act upon it. And what I have seen is this is definitely one of the biggest parts that stops pilots moving from pilots to be successful implemented systems. So, just going to get this to work. Okay, so industry like oil and gas is definitely not being ignoring AI or putting it on the side. We have, we in companies like SEEQ or in the companies I've worked with before have been implementing AI trials, pilots, proof of concepts, and innovation programs for several years. Problem is that many of those pilots remain successful in the pilot phase, but they never reach the control room, the daily production stand-up in the morning, the maintenance workflow, or the regulatory processes. And we call this the conversion gap. And essentially, the technology works in the demonstration in the confined guardrails of what we're doing. And once we try and move it and make it become part of how people decide and act, then it fades away. Because essentially, as powerful as that technology is, it is about people, about workflows, and about making people trust the system to make a decision for them. Okay. All right. So when we are making these kind of decisions here, we definitely need to talk about data. I mean, earlier, I definitely saw many people talking about the tech stack, how data has evolved over the years, how Pi came in place, how multiple systems essentially built layers. And at the moment, we are essentially, with the AI, trying to operate at a higher level on top of everything, bringing in all this data and all this information in together. And this is a challenge because we're trying to put together systems that have been built by different people, different contexts, and different requirements. And the data we are working with is in historians, like Pi, IP21. Some is in lab systems that have been built specifically for labs. spreadsheets, operator logics, engineering calculations. And especially when we talk about AI, some of the most important information is actually in the heads of the engineers, of the operators, of the reliability people who have done this for years. Like the gentleman was pointing out earlier, like if you are in the industry for 30, 40 years, you definitely have a wealth of information that it's hard to transfer to new generations. And I believe definitely this is where AI can play a role. Within all these different data sources, we have an additional data source that is also, the industry expert. And we don't have many of them. And especially, they want to probably retire at some point. Historians are not, so we definitely need to capture the information before it's too late, right? And even if the company has invested heavily on infrastructure, we still have essentially a misalignment of context, right? Maybe Pi or the historian was built for an operational decision. Maybe the spreadsheet is built for people to make long-term decisions. And so essentially, leadership, additionally, they also look at all these data, and they maybe don't see production, they see revenue, they see the potential, and so on, right? So all of this needs to be consolidated in a way that people can essentially act upon with a shared framework. So creating this shared framework is definitely partially a software challenge, but not only. It's a people challenge, a governance challenge, and it's something that we all need to collaborate before AI can even start getting its benefits. So this is where companies like potentially SEEQ or other companies in the AI space step in, and where AI is trying to get something to work. So essentially, we're not trying to replace these historians. We're not trying to replace the cloud platforms or digital twins. What we're trying to do is create a new system for all these people to collaborate within. So the subject matter expert will remain at the center, and companies like SEEQ are helping us connect the data together, create this operational context, create the logic, and make it repeatable, capturing that information from the experts and putting it into pathways that we can leverage day to day. So where is AI valuable and moving from pilot to production? So AI is valuable when essentially it removes friction. Less time finding the data, less time rebuilding the same analytic 100 times, less time translating context between different teams and making them understand the shared information. Scale comes as a byproduct of that efficiency. Once the expert's valuable point of view and workflow is captured and repeatable, we can then scale it across assets, teams, and decision-making processes. And when we are working with these pilots, as we've seen many, like what does good look like? What is it when we are working fine? So definitely it's when we have a clearly defined operational question, like we're not using AI as tool to solve it all. We are framing the problem. What are we trying to improve? What losses are we trying to recover? What risks are we trying to reduce, right? And once we have grounded in this context, then we can choose the right data sources, the operating models, definition, and bring in the correct experts to bring in their specific information. And at this point, the expert is going to own it. The expert is going to validate the data against reality. They're going to be able to say, does the system behave correctly? Does it avoid the false positive? Does it fall into the usual pitfalls of software in the edge cases? And especially, can people understand why it is giving a specific answer? And if the answer is not aligned to their expectation, can they dig in and see what's happening? Why is it answering this way? At this point, then we can create a visible, monitored, and auditable understanding of how the model works. And this is how we gain, essentially, trust from the users. All right, so let's go do this. So we've worked with many customers across the industry in all of these nice different industries, oil and gas definitely being a big one. And we have done many successful things using AI models. Downtime reduction, energy efficiency, and oil well lift issues solving. So many things have been solved by using AI. And essentially, when we do these kind of things, and I'm going to actually, because of time, I'm going to skip a little further. All right. So essentially, when we are doing these kind of things, we see some common patterns as to why things are working. And one common thing that we see is that it is not one algorithm, one solution with AI. It is essentially the common thread that we see across these customers is how expertise, context, and data come together, right? How people learn to trust it because they have participated in building it. They have seen how essentially faster analysis is not like the end goal, but it is the byproduct of having a system that knows our data, knows our framework, is built to fit our needs, and essentially can streamline better collaboration, and it can help us make decisions that are consistent, and it can help us avoid spending too much time with data that is not in the right format or data that's not behaving as we would like it to behave. So essentially, the point that I'm trying to convey here, and the important point, is that AI succeeds in operations when it becomes part of how people decide, act, and how they improve. People ultimately need to own this process. People need to be the guardrails initially. They have to be also in the process of validating the outputs. They need to tell the system what good looks like. And they need to say when something is useful or it isn't useful, when something is risky, and when something needs more context and more data. And essentially, the role of AI by what we've seen, is not to replace this judgment, is not to step in, is to remove the friction around that judgment. So wrapping up, a lot of what makes operations work today still lives in people's heads, in the experts. It's the known failure patterns, it's the exceptions, it's the workarounds, it's what to do when things don't align with expectations. And this judgment is not built in 1 minute, it's built over years. And the opportunity, I would say, is to capture that knowledge, right? To put it in the hands of younger generations, and even younger generations, maybe in universities and in schools, and essentially allow people to learn how to use AI to operationalize experience, operationalize context, and essentially be able to have 100 experts in our hands that we can question when we want. We don't have to find them in different rooms of the company. They're already embedded in the processes, in the way the AI works. And the AI is not a black box, but is essentially a book written by our experts in collaboration with our data. And so finally, the future is not AI instead of these experts. It is experts equipped with this trusted AI, creating more value from the assets they already understand by removing friction and allowing users to all see the benefit from the AI pathways. Thank you.
Thank you.